Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, here's something that we don't like to think about as self-published authors, and it's that our books could, over time, become irrelevant. Now, before you start panicking about things, I think we have to look at what are some of the causes that contribute to a book becoming irrelevant. First of all, the subject could be completely outdated, passé. This happens a lot with technology books, books on current news issues, particularly politics, and of course this year that's a big deal. And there's like diets. Let's say there's a hot diet, and then you see just this wave of books on that diet. And then once that diet is superseded by something better, which there never really is anything better there, is there? You can see those books become irrelevant. So, and this is particularly in the nonfiction arena. If it's more informational, definitely you're going to see some irrelevant books in that arena. So how about for fiction? Because largely fiction is pretty timeless. And so that's a good thing. It really helps you create a book that's more evergreen and will be good for a long time. However, even in that arena, you're going to see things kind of wax and wane in terms of their popularity. So for example, it seemed like some years back, everything was like Twilight or Hunger Games or Maze Runner, Harry Potter. I mean, all of those kinds of things have had their moment in the publishing sun. And now, you know, it's going to be superseded by what's next. But fiction has a lot longer time frame instead when compared to nonfiction. And so how can you keep your book from becoming irrelevant, or how do you know whether something needs to change? You know, what are the markers? First of all, you have to monitor your sales trends over time. And I recommend this for just any reason. You know, you certainly want to see how your sales are doing over time so that you can make some educated decisions. Now, as we talked about in a previous video on the self-publishing hamster wheel, you notice that for book sales, there's going to be like this spurt of sales when the book is new. And then it will just have a precipitous drop, typically within a not too long period of time. And then sales over the next years will be kind of flat. I call that the waterfall sales cycle because it starts up at the top and then goes down. It's not like a typical product lifestyle, which starts out low, you get early adopters, it peaks, and then goes. No. Books are different in that way. So you don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction to a change in sales thinking that it has become irrelevant just because you see sales falling off, because sales will naturally fall off for most books. So you really have to look at it over time to see if that fall off is a long-term trend. And also, what I see some authors get into the mindset of is a series. And so they start out and they think they're going to publish like one book a year for 6 years or whatever. And particularly like in fiction, you know, I'm going to do this whole YA fantasy series or whatever. Well, by the time you get to the 6th edition, it might be passé. So I think you kind of have to go one book at a time. You know, you certainly want to keep in your mind that you might want to do a series, but you know, don't be disappointed if the series doesn't take off and then you just want to keep getting it done because you have in your mind that you're going to do 6 books like this. You know, you got to make some educated business decisions about the time and resources that you want to spend on something like a series. And here's the other thing, and this is particularly for nonfiction topics. You really have to decide whether a book is really the ideal way to deliver your content. Books are relatively static. True, you can update the manuscript if there's typos and things, but they're pretty static. And so they aren't fluid in terms of changes that can be made. So for example, I know of some bloggers that do a maybe statistics update or something on a particular topic, and then they keep updating that blog post so that it is fresh all the time. Now, Google loves that kind of stuff. They like to see that content is always being refreshed and current. And if you put that stuff in a book, especially like statistics and things like that, it has the chance to become irrelevant really quickly. So you have to really decide whether a book is the way to go with that. You know, is a blog that's monetized through advertising or through gated content, like on a Patreon or Medium, that sort of thing. Is that a better way to go financially for you and in terms of the investment that you have to make in these materials? So I think we have to get off of the book bandwagon sometimes and really think about how we're going to handle updates to our books. Now, another way you might want to share content, particularly if it's nonfiction or educational in nature, might be through a Udemy course. I've chosen that path because it's super easy to update that material over time. Extremely easy. And so I've really liked that platform to sell my nonfiction content. So you really have to be looking at the nature of the material that you're delivering and how people want to access it. You know, not everybody wants to access this information through a book. And, you know, like I was talking about Udemy courses, some people really would not learn as well if that material was presented in a book. And this also speaks to the aspect of going multi-format with things. You know, I've really been encouraging everybody to go with audiobooks, print books, ebooks, online, you know, just look at multiple formats for your material. Also, you want to concentrate on evergreen topics. Now, as we talked about, fiction is typically evergreen, although the popularity of certain genres will come and go over time. But in terms of the nonfiction arena, for example, my books, the ones that are evergreen, I really concentrate on more strategy type information, which doesn't change as often. But when it comes to technical aspects, I usually put that in either my Udemy courses or on my blog posts so that I can easily update it and everything that's available is the most current. And here's one thing you might want to think about is that if there's a hot trend out there, jump on it while it's hot, but realize that it will quickly become not hot. And then don't be disappointed You know, you're realizing that you're just publishing quickly. You want to jump on a certain trend bandwagon, and then when it's done, you're not going to feel bad. So when you do that, when you publish quickly because it's hot, watch the number of resources in terms of time, money, and effort that you put into it. Because it is going to have maybe a quick payoff, but it might not have a long-term payoff. So I hope that's given you some food for thought, and I hope you will revisit the podcast again for more information like this. Please rate, review, and subscribe to The Heidi Thorne Show on the podcast platforms of Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, and Podbean. If you like to listen on your Alexa, you just have to use the Apple Podcast skill and you can find The Heidi Thorne Show there. Like the video better, either to listen or watch, subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel and make sure that you turn on notifications so that when you know a new video is available for viewing. My self-published books are available on Amazon, of course, Audible, and Apple Books. You just have to search for my name, Heidi Thorne, go to my author page, and all the books that are available on those platforms are shown there. Don't forget to share the podcast or my books with your friends on social media. And if you'd like to connect with me, my website is very simply HeidiThorne.com. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I'll look forward to talking with you again in the next episode. And in the meantime, have a great day.